Well, thanks. All right. So yes, I work on web standards at Adobe. I am co-chair of the CSS Working Group, but last week it was my other co-chair who managed to get writing modes resolved to go to proposed recommendations, so I don't get to claim much for that one. I'm going to talk to you today about how all of you can help getting browser bugs fixed. And I'm going to start with a little bit of audience participation. Everybody here does some kind of web development. How many people here, raise your hand, if you have run into a browser bug? So many bugs. All right. Of all you people, which is almost everybody who has run into a browser bug, how many people have actually reported the bug that you found? That's about what I usually see. Maybe 10%, if that. I'm hoping by the time I end this presentation, more people will feel empowered to log browser bugs, help them, nudge them along the way to being fixed. And I'm going to tell you about the things that I've found have been effective at getting browser developers to actually do something for you. So why should you care? You run into a browser bug, you find a solution, and you go along your merry way. If you're anything like me, you find the bug, you figure out a solution, you go along, and sometime later, months, years, maybe even weeks, you run into the same bug again, and you've forgotten what the solution was, and you have to go through the effort of solving somebody else's problem again. So if you manage to get a browser bug fixed, that means there's one less thing that you have to do. You're helping future you. But it's not just yourself. You're also helping hundreds or thousands of developers around the world who will also run into this bug. Maybe some other people in this room will run into the same bug that you do, and if you all can manage to get the bug fixed, that's one less thing for other developers to worry about. But also, a more bug-free web helps users of the web. A better environment for browsing is better for everybody, and the less bugs there are, the more that web developers like yourselves can do things for your users, and getting a browser bug fixed means that billions of people around the world have a better time in their browsers. And I apologize, maybe I need to shave my beard for presentations. The microphone always seems to rustle a little bit, and I'm sorry about that. So, what can you do to fix a bug? Well, browsers are open source. So, you're developers, you could go fix the bug yourself. It is possible. I worked at a team on Adobe that did this very thing. We fixed bugs in lots of browsers, we added features to lots of browsers, but it's not really what I expect anybody to do. We no longer do it ourselves. It wasn't really a cost-effective thing. We couldn't really justify the expense of having a team fixing bugs in browsers, because there are people where it's their job to fix bugs. There are browser engineers funded in some cases by companies that have lots of money, so they really should do their job, and there are ways in which we as users of the platform, we as developers, can help them to nudge them along to fixing the bugs that are the worst things in our development life. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is how to influence browser developers, how to nudge them along. Things that I found effective both in my own life and in what I hear from other people in getting browser developers to fix the bugs that are important. The one basic, if nothing else, just do this one thing, is just make sure the bug is reported. There are a number of search engines, this is one of them, that will search through all of the bug bases for all of the browsers, at least all of the major browsers, and let you know whether a bug has already been reported. So at the very least, you can go and see whether something needs to be done about this bug. If you find the bug that is causing you trouble, the easiest, most cost-effective thing you can do is just to vote for it. You might not think that this would make much of a difference, but it actually does. I've been in meetings with browser developers talking about a particular bug, sometimes a bug that they know has been around for a long time, but they've told me point blank, I can't get anybody to fix this bug because it only has 10 votes. And these other bugs over here have 200 votes, and so these are the ones that I'm going to actually spend some time fixing. So if you can find a bug, please, and it's causing you pain, please vote for it. There's like a +1, a favorite, a follow in these bug systems. That gives the browser developers some sense of priority on what actually needs to be fixed on their platforms. And it's not just bugs. New features are all listed in these bug repositories as bugs. So if, say, you were interested in having paint worklets be implemented in more browsers, you can go to the browsers that don't implement them and find a bug that says implement paint worklet and vote for that bug. And that will help the browser engineers get around to implementing paint worklets and making them something that you can use all over the web. You can also put new information in bug comments. If you came at the bug from a slightly different direction, putting new steps in is a really good thing to do. The only thing that you should not do in a bug comment is actually just do a +1, because the voting mechanisms are there for that. And if you can't find the bug, just write it up. It can be a very quick thing, or it can be a very involved thing, depending on how much effort you want to put into it. And don't worry about adding a duplicate bug to these systems. If you've made a good faith effort to find the bug and you haven't found it, writing a bug and letting some browser engineer do some triaging and say, oh no, it's actually this bug over here, is perfectly fine. And that just means that the next person that goes and tries to find that bug with the search terms that you used, they'll find your duplicate, it'll link to the actual bug. And so in some cases, like this, duplicates are a fine and good thing. So you've gone and logged a bug, or you've found the bug and you voted on it, so you're done, right? All bugs get fixed. Or sometimes they just hang out forever and get closed as one fixed after 20 years of being around. So there are some things that you can do to improve your chances of getting a bug fixed. And they're mainly just writing a good bug, making sure that the steps to the bug are the smallest number of steps they can possibly be. Quite a few bugs that browser developers get from outside their projects are load this URL and things don't look good. That's not much to go on. So if you can reduce the thing that is going wrong to just a few lines of code and say, here's what needs to be fixed to make things better for me, it's much more likely that a browser engineer is going to actually do something about it. You can add examples to a bug. You can show what the repercussions of the bug are. That will give the browser developer more to go on when they go and have to fight for spending time to fix a particular bug. And finally, the most effective thing that you can do is to add a test case. The browser developer, when they fix the bug, they're going to have to go add a test case or a set of test cases themselves. So you can do a little bit of work to help the browser developer, and that'll make it more likely that they'll actually get around to fixing the bug for you. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about test cases. 10 years ago, before I got started in this web platform stuff, all of the browsers had their own test sets that only ran on their own browser, and there was no sharing of tests. And over the last 10 years, there's been this thing that is now called the Web Platform Tests Project that is a repository of cross-browser tests that the browsers are now all sharing. So if a browser developer on Firefox writes a cross-browser test, they can upload it to Web Platform Tests, and that test gets synced to all of the other browsers that are sharing. And so it's a multiplier effect. And somebody who doesn't work on a browser can add a bug to this repository, and it will get moved out to all of the browser's testing environments and be tested in perpetuity using some shared infrastructure that they have been working on together. And this set of tests are run independently and reported. Every test, there are millions of these tests. Every test gets run 4 times a day on all the major browsers, and the results get reported. And so it's a second indicator for the browser developer that something is going wrong in their browser, and it's a second nudge towards fixing the thing. It's not only a failure in their own test system, it's a failure in this external test system that they have to look at and triage and decide whether or not to fix. Bugs that have tests in this cross-browser test repository are much more likely to be fixed, especially over the last couple of years. They've shown how the trajectory of tests that run and pass in more than one browser or in all browsers has been increasing, and the velocity of these tests working in more than one browser has increased as this Web Platform Tests project has been going on. So there is a bunch of documentation at Web Platform Tests about how to contribute, how to write tests, and there are a few formats that they talk about. And the two I want to mention are test harness.js tests. They're basically unit tests. So if you know any sort of unit testing framework, this is just a test in JavaScript with assertions, much like any other unit testing framework. If you don't know what unit tests are, go find out. They are one of the best things that you can add to your own development. But I think most people know about them, so I'm not going to mention much about this, except that this is one way that you can add a test to Web Platform Tests. The second one that I'm going to talk about is ref tests, which are a kind of visual comparison test, but they're different from regular snapshot tests that are actually just testing against, say, an image that you've taken a snapshot of a test result. They're set up a little differently, and they're set up such that they can run across all browsers, across all environments, across all, say, font setups, graphics setups, and there's no picture of the test result that you have to maintain. They're actually the only snapshot tests that are actually worth anything. If you look at this documentation, there's a bunch of other test formats that they mention, but you should ignore all of them. They're mainly just test formats that the browsers used in their legacy systems, and nobody should ever write them again. Test harness.js tests and ref tests are the only way to go. So a little bit more about ref tests. Here's how they're set up. You have 2 files that get rendered in a browser. One file has what they expect the test to render as, and it doesn't use the feature under test at all. In a lot of cases, it's just a green box of a certain dimension. And then you have another file that actually uses the thing that you're testing that produces exactly the same rendering as the reference. And that can be a little tricky to set up, but sometimes it's actually pretty easy. And you have the browser in a particular environment with a particular font setup and all of this, render both files and then compare the two against each other. So there's nothing to maintain. You're just rendering stuff, doing pixel comparison, and if the pixels match, the test is good. So I'm going to show you a simple ref test that I recently added to web platform tests. The situation was, there's a typography Slack I'm on, and one of the people there mentioned a bug they were seeing in Firefox. They had a JavaScript file that was comparing the widths of various bits of text and then doing fitting. So it would make the text bigger to fit a wider thing, or make the text smaller to fit a smaller thing. So you could measure in JavaScript and get the text to fit the environment you wanted it in. And Firefox was just giving bad widths for a particular set of features, first letter and text transform. So I went and found the bug for this. It's about 10 years old. Firefox knows about the bug. It's not that important to fix, so it's never gotten fixed. But I voted for it and got my friend on Slack to vote for it as well. And then, since I had a talk to prepare about testing, I decided to write a ref test for it. And let's see. Let me show you the test. So here is the reference. It's got a green box. It's got some text that describes what you should see on the screen, that there should be no red. That's not actually necessary, but it's a style that people use for ref tests that I kind of like. And it's not using any of the features that I want to test. It's not using first letter. It's not using text transform. And then I have the start of the test that is using first letter and is using text transform, and measuring the width in a visual way by adding a background color. And here is the text reference in Firefox and the test start in Firefox, which on first rendering does it bad. You can see there's the extra bit in the red part. Who knows why that width is actually there. So I'm going to be a coward and not do any live coding. I'm just going to show you the complete test, which is adding a couple things. I had those two spans that were inline blocks, and I just said that they're position absolute, so they will overlap. And actually, I need to redo this because it is only on first rendering that the bug shows up. So the two things are overlapping, and I've made the text transparent because the actual text rendering isn't part of this bug. It's just the width that we're concerned about. And on Chrome, everything looks great. There's no red because those two things, the test and control spans, are exactly the same width. And in Firefox, the red pokes out. So this is going to be a failure for Firefox. And so that's basically it to a ref test. You have two files, and they have the same rendering. And if you were looking very, very closely, it's probably hard to see, the rendering is actually different between browsers. The green box in Firefox is a little taller, and that just happens to be because I have a default font that is a little bit taller than the default font that's used in Chrome. But this doesn't matter because we're comparing Chrome rendering to Chrome rendering and Firefox rendering to Firefox rendering. So I put this into web platform tests, and it's now being run 4 times a day. And you can see that the latest Firefox that was tested is showing failure. So there's now a test result that is showing up 4 times a day to basically shame the Firefox engineers into eventually fixing this bug. And hopefully, they will get around to it. All right. So adding a test case is really the best way to get some attention to the bug. And adding a test case to web platform tests is a way of getting more people to look at the problem and hopefully get somebody to actually commit to the fix. But another thing that you can do is just to tell people about the problem that you're running into. My friend on Slack told everybody in the Slack channel about this problem, and I happened to read it and do some extra work to make it slightly more likely that this bug is going to be fixed. Mention to people that you're updating or voting on a bug. Maybe you'll get more people to vote on it in solidarity. And you can show people the test case. I showed the test case to some people that I work with in the CSS Working Group, and they showed me a few things to fix in it to make it a little bit more bulletproof. The test that's actually in web platform tests is a little bit more complicated. But I only got those improvements because I told people about it. And here I am today telling you about this bug. Perhaps some of you will go take a look at it and vote for it yourselves. So letting people know the problems that you're running into, letting people know what it is that you've done to try to fix the problem, you can get better solutions to things, you can get people talking about the problem, and you can get browser developers to notice something's going wrong. This is an example from about a year ago. There was a developer who had a site that was working great in all of the browsers, and he tested on Chrome Canary, which is an excellent thing to do. You should take a look at all the developer versions of the browsers and see how your site is working in them to get some idea of what is going to happen for your users in the upcoming weeks and months. And he found that his site in Chrome Canary, regular Chrome was fine, but in Chrome Canary it just broke. And so he wrote a bug saying, here's my code, here's where it's going wrong, why did you change this? You're making the web worse. And he didn't have to wait 20 years to have his bug closed as won't fix. Almost immediately, the browser developer went and closed it as won't fix because the spec said it was supposed to be this. The spec had changed, and so the Chrome engineer was being diligent and changed Chrome to match the spec. So this guy, the developer, said, no, this is not good enough. And he looked at the spec and found the email addresses of the spec authors and said, why did you change the spec? And it turns out the spec change was bad. They hadn't considered this case. And because of this guy's diligence, they fixed the spec and fixed Chrome Canary before the bug or the spec conformance actually shipped in the browser. Here's another example from just a few months ago. This guy said, hey, I'm running into this problem. Anybody know why this is going on? And he got a browser developer to reply saying, well, it works for me. What are you talking about? And they went back and forth for a while, came up with a JS fiddle that actually demonstrated the problem, and it was an actual problem. And just recently, this got fixed, and it's going to be fixed in mainline Firefox next month. So telling people about things, letting people know the problems that you're running into on Twitter, in a blog post, in a conference talk, in a lightning talk, grousing to your fellow employees, all of these things can be a good way of moving the platform along, making it better for everybody. So, I hope I've convinced a few of you that there are little things that you can do, low effort to medium effort things that you can do to try to get browser bugs fixed when you run into them. So hopefully the next time you run into a browser bug, you can go find the bug and vote on it, or log the bug if you can't find it. If it's a bug that is really holding you back, consider spending some time looking into writing a cross-browser test so that you're saving time for the browser developer. They can more easily justify spending time fixing it. And tell other people about the problem. Maybe you can crowdsource a bit of help in getting some of these things done so that your bug can get fixed. So please go out and improve the web platform for future you, your fellow web developers, and everyone else in the world. Thank you.